You slip quietly into the hall, and immediately the air presses down on you like warm velvet. The chamber is vast, smoky with candlelight, shadows dancing across stone walls as if gossiping about what they're about to witness. The clatter of goblets, the scrape of chairs, the faint jingle of spurs and jewels. It's a sensory buffet even before the actual food arrives. The crowd is enormous, 300 bodies packed elbow to elbow, their perfume and sweat weaving into a heady aroma. Tonight is supposed to be celebration, prestige, and a little bit of bragging rights. Like what you're seeing? Hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'm always reading them. Your seat feels solid, reassuring, though scratchier. Across the table, a lord in fur-lined sleeves raises his chalice, and you can practically hear the coins rattling in his ego. Everyone wants to be noticed here. Every laugh lands too loudly. Every anecdote puffed chest. And you, yes, you, are right in the middle of it, like surrounded by an ocean of chatter that smells faintly of roasted pheasant and ambition. The first course arrives, trenchers stacked with bread dense enough to be building material. You tear a piece off, chewing slowly, and notice the buttery glaze glistening under the light. The cooks have outdone themselves. Somewhere behind the stone partitions, the kitchen roars with activity, the clang of ladles, the hiss of broth. It's a medieval version of a Michelin star nightmare. If Gordon Ramsay ever time traveled, he'd have a meltdown in record time. A servant passes you a bowl of stew, thick with barley and dotted with chunks of venison. You blow gently, the steam fogging your vision for a heartbeat, and sip. It's hearty, salty, comforting, yet you notice a strange aftertaste. Metallic, faint but lingering. You frown, glance around, but everyone else seems too busy smacking lips. Maybe it's just you. Maybe it's just the wine. A minstrel strums nearby, his lute half in tune, half in rebellion. He sings of kings and heroes, though honestly, his voice cracks so often you'd think puberty returned. Guests clap anyway, pretending to be charmed. You lean back, sip your wine, and watch torches flare against banners hanging overhead. The fabric glows in reds and golds, lions and crosses, symbols of pride stitched by hands. Then the meats arrive. Platters heaped with roasted swans, pigs stuffed with herbs, and fish that still looks like it's judging your life choices. Servants weave through the tables, balancing towers of silver and copper. A roast is laid in front of you, the skin crisp, glistening with fat. Your knife cuts easily, too easily. The juices running like a promise. You chew, swallow, and again, there it is, that faint, sharp edge. Metallic, sour, whispering that something is not quite right. You shift in your seat, suddenly aware of how warm it feels in the hall. The candles sputter, the air heavy with smoke. A lady to your left fans herself, her smile brittle. Across the room, a knight scratches his throat and reaches for more wine, as if to wash down the discomfort. One man sneezes violently, startling those nearby. Just ordinary reactions, you tell yourself. Just too much spice, too much heat, too much everything. But your ears start to catch little fragments of murmurs. Does the meat taste odd to you? One whisper. My tongue feels numb. Another. You glance at the servants, faces pale, movements hurried. One nearly trips while carrying a tray, his eyes darting like he'd rather be anywhere but here. Historically, large banquets like this were more than just dinners. They were performances. Records tell us that medieval feasts could last hours, sometimes even days, with courses designed to impress rather than nourish. Picture sugar sculptures taller than a person, exotic spices worth more than a horse, wines shipped. But behind the glamour, hygiene was, let's just say, medieval. Rats had VIP passes to most kitchens. Dung and disease lurked in every shadow. So even without foul play, the odds of indigestion or worse were included. A jester tumbles into the hall, bells jingling, face painted with a grin that looks creepier than it should. He cracks jokes about greedy nobles, trips on purpose, and everyone chuckles. You can't help noticing, though, that the laughter sounds just a little strained, as if the room is already shifting under the weight of unease. A lord nearby wipes sweat from his brow, muttering about the heat. Another coughs, a low, rattling sound. You swallow hard, your throat suddenly dry, and reach for your goblet. The wine burns going down, sharp, almost biting. Around you, plates clatter as servants rush to bring pies. Pastries stuffed with fruit, pies gilded with golden crusts. You bite into one, the sweetness overwhelming. But underneath there's that nagging, bitter undertone again, like biting tinfoil. Historians still argue whether the mass sickness, deliberate poisoning, or simply the inevitable result of unsanitary kitchens. Some chroniclers describe these events as sinister plots, rival factions attempting to wipe out entire houses in a single evening. Others point out that foodborne illnesses were rampant. A hall packed with 300 people was basically a buffet for bacteria. Your stomach growls, not in hunger, but in warning. You glance around. The lady with the lace fan is pale now, dabbing her lips. The knight has loosened his collar, breathing heavily. A merchant groans quietly, clutching his middle, his face glistening with sweat. You shift again, the wooden bench beneath you suddenly hard as stone, and then you smell it. A strange, acrid scent mixing with the usual aromas of meat and wine, almost like almonds, faint but unmistakable. Your mind races, connecting the dots, remembering old tales of poisons whispered through history, bitter almonds, cyanide. Of course, not everyone would recognize it, but the scent is there, teasing your nerves. You glance at the high table, where the host sits proud and oblivious, raising his cup to toast the company. His voice booms, words slurred just slightly. Around him, courtiers laugh too loudly, sip too quickly. The toast echoes through the hall, a ripple of sound that tries and fails to disguise the growing tension. The music falters, the lute's strings twang out of tune. A servant drops a platter, the clatter silencing the nearest tables. Eyes dart, whispers rise, and somewhere in the hall, someone retches. It's faint, but enough to send a shiver racing down your spine. You keep chewing slowly, as though delay might save you, but your hands tremble on the goblet's stem. Around you, laughter continues, but thinner. Punctured by coughs, sneezes, mutters. The party glitters on the surface, but beneath it, the cracks widen, and the night begins to sour. The moment of laughter dies in your ears, replaced by a sharp intake of breath from somewhere down the table. A man slumps forward, his goblet rolling across the boards, spilling dark wine like blood. You blink, and then another guest wavers, her jeweled hairpiece tilting as if bowing before she collapses into her neighbor's lap. Suddenly, the noise of the hall is no longer cheerful, it is frantic. Chairs scrape, goblets topple, servants shout. The great hall becomes a storm, 300 voices breaking apart into groans, cries, and panicked prayer. Your stomach twists. The sweet, buttery pie you swallowed now feels heavy. You press a hand against the table, the wood sticky with spilled wine, and you know it. Something is very wrong, and it's spreading fast. Guests stagger to their feet, some clutching at their throats. Others grip their bellies. A knight in gleaming armor, well, it was gleaming 2 hours ago, shakes uncontrollably as he tries to draw his sword, only to drop it with a clatter louder than the music ever did. The minstrel stops playing entirely, his lute dangling from limp fingers, strings still humming with the ghost of the last chord. Servants rush in with water, but the buckets do nothing. Guests drink, only to double over moments later. You catch the sight of a woman's pearls scattering across the rushes as she collapses, the beads trampled underfoot by fleeing nobles, the smell of sweat, vomit, fear. It mixes into the air until it chokes your lungs, and through it all, the host still sits at the high table, blinking heavily. His hands tremble, his lips pale. He tries to speak, to call for order, but the words slur, crack, and vanish into a wave of coughing that racks his whole body. If this was conspiracy, then the poisoner was thorough. No distinction between friend and foe. Everyone drinks, everyone eats, and everyone pays. Historians still argue whether this banquet was sabotaged by political rivals or simply one of those catastrophic foodborne disasters that medieval Europe specialized in. Chroniclers describe it like Judgment Day. Nobles crawling on the floor, servants screaming for priests, dogs licking up scraps that made them stagger moments later. One account even claims a stable boy outside, who ate leftover pie crusts, collapsed in straw. And yet, modern historians debate whether these tales are embellished. After all, medieval writers loved a good morality tale more than accuracy. But you don't have the luxury of scholarly distance. You're here, and it's chaos. A noble woman clutches your sleeve, her eyes wide, pupils blown like she's staring straight at the abyss. She tries to speak, but only manages a strangled wheeze before sliding to the floor. Your heart kicks. And you stagger back, nearly tripping over her sprawled skirts. The jester, absurd in his bells and motley, is the only one who dares laugh, but it's not a laugh you'd want to hear twice. It's shrill, unhinged, the sound of someone who knows the joke is on him. He dances in circles, chanting about death's banquet, until two servants tackle him, whether to silence or protect him, unclear. Here's a quirky detail. Medieval kitchens sometimes used pewter plates and goblets that leached lead into food and drink. Over time, that could cause headaches, nausea, even madness. Some argue the poisonings might have been lead. Lead exposure mixed with spoiled meat. Imagine explaining that to the guests. Oh, don't worry. You're not cursed. You just have medieval Tupperware poisoning. Doesn't exactly calm the nerves. Around you, the panic only grows. Someone shouts to bar the doors, fearing assassins might strike again. Others rush to throw open windows, desperate for air. Candles topple, wax spilling, shadows leaping like demons on the walls. The scent of roasted swan has turned sour in your nostrils, mingling with the almond tang you can't ignore. You stumble toward the exit, but the crush of bodies pushes you back. The hall is a tide pool of nobles, jewels, swords, gowns, all pressed together in fear, whispering prayers or curses. Some clutch crosses, others shake fists at invisible enemies. It's hard not to imagine the poisoner. Watching, perhaps even sitting among you, smiling faintly as the hall collapses into madness. Then, silence, if only for a heartbeat. A hush falls as the host rises unsteadily, gripping the table with white knuckles. He opens his mouth, tries to speak, but instead vomits across the dishes in front of him. The silence shatters. Screams rise like fire. It's worth remembering. Not all poison banquets ended in death. Some guests survived, sometimes by sheer luck, sometimes because they ate less, or avoided wine, or had the iron stomach of a medieval peasant. Chroniclers note survivors who claimed visions during illness, swearing angels or demons. Others woke weak but alive, swearing off rich feasts forever, until, inevitably, the next invitation arrived. You steady yourself against the wall, watching as servants drag bodies aside, trying to clear pathways for priests. The chanting begins, Latin prayers echoing off the stone, rising above sobs and coughing fits. It sounds like a dirge, a funeral service given in advance. Your throat burns, your stomach heaves, but you're upright. For now, you wonder if it's adrenaline or if maybe you just didn't eat enough swan to make a difference. The hall tilts in your vision, candle flames blurring into streaks of gold. Historians still argue whether the entire 300 guests poisoned account was even true, or if it was a propagandist tale designed to smear an unpopular noble. Records are patchy. One chronicler writes 100 dead, another none. The truth may be somewhere between. What's undeniable is how the story stuck, retold through centuries as a warning that even the richest feast can hide death in its spices. The last image that settles into your mind is surreal. Jewels glittering in torchlight as their owners collapse, goblets overturned, fine food trampled into mush, a hall that began as theater of power now morgue. Draped in banners, you close your eyes, whispering a prayer or maybe just a wish that the night would end. Around you, voices fade, footsteps scatter, the storm dying down into eerie quiet. Somewhere, a dog howls. Somewhere, a bell tolls. And in that fading moment, you realize the banquet's lesson. Grandeur and ruin often dine at the same table. You breathe slowly, let the sounds dim, and allow the last candle to gutter out in your mind's eye. Thank you for listening. This is where I fade out, leaving you in quiet. The quiet after the storm, where history always lingers like an aftertaste.